What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video, and welcome to your stimulus package update and daily news report for Wednesday, March 2nd. Last night was the State of the Union address, so in today's video I want to give you a State of the Union address recap, but also we got to talk about President Biden's big stimulus change, this big massive change that people were saying was going to happen, and we were going to learn about it in the State of the Union address. Well, here's what we found out. We have gone from the Build Back Better Act to the Building a Better America plan. That is the big change. And here's the reason why I say this is Biden's big stimulus change is because, and it's very interesting, what's happening is Democrats are taking the Build Back Better Act that had not enough support in the Senate, that people in the House were actually starting to go against due to the rising inflation. Well, Democrats took that same bill, they pulled the different provisions out of it, stuffed it into a different type of bill, call it something different, right? Whether it's the Unity Act, the Building a Better America plan, doesn't matter what it is. But they're taking those provisions out, putting it into a new bill, and saying, here, this is our new thing. And so that's the issue. And this is what the American people have been complaining about for months. That Democrats, all they seem to be doing is taking the same discussions, the same proposals, and just throwing it into the next bill every single time and hoping eventually it's going to pass. But that's not what's looking likely. Now, here's what's very interesting. Things got really interesting, and I was interested to see if President Biden talked about certain provisions last night, certain things, right? Now, things are going to get interesting because of lawmakers, what they're already saying as of this morning. Some don't think that this new plan is going to work. Others say it's the exact same bill that we had before, just renaming it. And then we got Joe Manchin that says nothing's changed. Now, let's look at what President Biden actually said last night. Now, I'll give you what lawmakers are currently discussing this morning. President Biden spoke about Russia and Ukraine first, and how Russia completely miscalculated Ukraine's willingness to just roll over and let Russia take over Ukraine. He didn't mention Russian or the Ukrainian President Zelensky, though, which I thought was somewhat interesting that he didn't mention him, because he's one of the one people that's kind of holding the whole thing together. President Biden did talk about how the U.S. airspace is now restricted to Russian planes. He talked about how the U.S. task force is also now being tasked with going in and seizing Russian oligarchs' assets, right? Like yachts and planes and things like that. He also brought up how the U.S. will tap into roughly 30 million barrels of oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserves. Now, the purpose, just to give you an idea, the U.S. uses somewhere between 18 and 19 million barrels of oil per day, okay? And that's not just for cars and stuff like that, it's, in general. But what you need to keep in mind is that 30 million barrels, if oil just completely stopped, we weren't getting anything. It would last us like a day and a half, okay? Not much. But the purpose behind releasing 30 million barrels is actually pretty simple. The purpose is just to hopefully bring prices down a little bit, or at least make them stable. Not so prices go up. Just in the past 2 days, where I live, prices have gone up about 7 cents. 7 cents a gallon. I don't know where you live, but you don't have to tell me where you live, but let me know, let's say in what state and how much gas prices have gone up just in the past week. Let me know in the past week, because the past week is when we've really seen Russia invading Ukraine. It's been 7 days. Today is day 7. All right? So let me know. You can answer that down in the comment section below. Now, President Biden, he did talk about how inflation in 2021 was due to the fact of cars costing more money. He said that 1/3 of inflation in 2021 was simply due to the pricing of cars. And that's true. Okay? But and this is something that was addressed by the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, and he mentioned this last year, is that, yes, even though car prices were the initial cause of inflation, the problem there is it was broadening. In the middle to end of 2021, inflation was broadening across multiple different sectors, not just automotive. And President Biden didn't touch on that. Biden also went on to say that we have a choice. We lower wages and make Americans poor, or we lower costs. Those are his two things. Lower wages and make Americans poor, which if Americans are poor, that means the prices of products would have to come down. So we'd see inflation drop. Now that works. Or we keep wages the same and we lower costs, right? Which would effectively lower the price of products, which would bring inflation down. Now, here's what you need to keep in mind. Biden's solution for lowering costs is actually something we've seen before. He believes it's the Build Back Better Act. Okay? It's his plan. The Building the Better America. Right? That's his plan. But while he's pitching this, just to give you an idea, he spoke about how we need $15 minimum wage, that this is a requirement, that we need this across the United States, not just in certain states and cities. He wants to lower the cost at the same time. And outside of this, he didn't mention much about fighting inflation. Just, we need to increase wages and lower costs. Yeah, that would work. Now, directly after this speech, okay, just to give you an idea, Senator Joe Manchin said, nothing's changed. And he went on to say they just can't help themselves. And he's referring to Democrats, how they keep on pushing for the same outdated demands, even though multiple lawmakers have come out in opposition of the Build Back Better Act because it won't work. Because it would increase, chances are it would increase inflation. We would add to our national deficit, right? Two things that Senator Joe Manchin and multiple moderates said they would not support. But yet Democrats keep doing the same thing. The problem is, like Joe Manchin stated, nothing's changed. But President Biden did say that he wants to create more American jobs and manufacture more here in the U.S. Now, many people would think that is good, right? More American jobs, that's great. Manufacturing here in the U.S., which would create more jobs, well, that's good too. Here's the problem. When you manufacture in the United States, because of everything that we have to pay in cost and labor and taxes, right? The problem is manufacturing and building here in the U.S., this means it costs more money, which means there's a higher possibility of additional inflation, or we would slow down the disinflation. That's an issue. So what President Biden is saying is, let's increase wages to $15, let's lower costs, but by lowering costs, we're going to build in America, manufacture in America, hire in America. That creates more. That's additional inflation. So even though he's saying, yeah, this is what we need to do, he's also giving us steps to take to not accomplish those goals of bringing inflation down, but actually increasing it. So it's interesting where he went and the different steps he was taking to get there, but I don't know. There really wasn't a clear direction to me based off of what I was watching last night. Now, I was going to come on last night and do a recap last night of what was said. The problem with doing that is it was pretty much everything that we knew before. But something else that I was wondering if President Biden would touch on in this speech or not, which he ultimately did, is that nobody making under $400,000 would see a penny more in taxes. I personally didn't want to see him mention that. Okay? Here's the reason why. By him mentioning that anybody making under $400,000 per year would not see a penny more in taxes, what this did is this pretty much put a nail in the coffin of the Social Security 2100 Act, a sacred trust. This is pretty much dead because what this bill or this proposal would have done is anybody making over, was it $140,000 or something like that, would have had to pay more in Social Security tax, which means people making under $400,000 would have had to pay more. It would have went to Social Security, but they would have had to pay more. It would have been taxes. But by President Biden saying nobody making less than $400,000 per year will see a penny more in taxes, this pretty much just killed that bill or that proposal. Now, President Biden did go on and talk about providing additional child care credits to help with parents and children. He talked about extending the child tax credit payments of $250 or $300 per month. He brought up how he has that this was a hugely successful provision. This was something that Democrats passed, and it provided millions and millions of parents and children with a lifeline for 6 months. But the problem is it ended on December 15th. That was the last payment. And the problem since then is 3.7 million children have fallen back into poverty because these payments were not extended. And that was the initial worry. That was the worry when this was passed a year ago, is that if Democrats passed this provision and this was accepted for 1 year, the problem is, what if it didn't get extended? I said this last year, that this is really good. This is going to help out millions of children. This is going to help out millions of parents. This will also possibly lead to additional inflation. But I said the worry is, and this is something that many people have brought up before, is our government, especially Democrats, try to push all these government funded programs onto the American people to get us more reliant on the government. But the problem is, if they don't get extended, then this group of people, these millions of families, were reliant on this $250 to $300 per month. Well, what happens when it stops? Well, when it stopped, 3.7 million children fell right back into poverty. That's the issue. So we'll see if anything else goes from this, but my expectation is the child tax credit payments are not going to get extended, at least at this time, if it's coming from a Democrat. If it's coming from a Republican, we could get Republican input, but I doubt Democrats are going to vote and support a Republican proposal. Not the one from Senator Mitt Romney, but we will see. They could come and find a compromise somewhere in the middle, but my guess is they're not going to do that. I hope they do, but my guess is they won't. President Biden also brought up how he has ordered more pills than anybody in the world to help fight against COVID. And he said, you got a few smirks and remarks from people in the in Congress when he said he's ordered more pills than anybody else in the world. But he said, and I quote, "We're launching the Test to Treat initiative so people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they're positive, receive antiviral pills on the spot at no cost." So this is actually pretty important because these antiviral pills, they have I believe it's like a 90% efficacy rate of keeping you out of the hospital, which is great. So it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not, you can still take these pills. One thing that I can tell you is that in March, we're expected to get 1 million pills. And in April, I believe it's supposed to be at least double that. So we could have about 3 million pills over the next 2 months. Now, one thing that I thought was very interesting, I want to touch on this for a second. And I thought this was interesting because a lot of people have been pushing this. And this crisis is coming up very soon. But one thing that I thought was interesting is that President Biden didn't mention student debt. He didn't mention it. He didn't talk about forgiving student debt. He didn't talk about how millions of people are struggling because of this. I think it's like a $300 to $400 monthly average payment. He did mention that one of the things he wants to do is make college more affordable. He talked about increasing Pell Grants, but he didn't discuss anything about forgiving student debt. I thought that was interesting because this was one of his campaign promises. He didn't address raising Social Security, right? Another campaign promise. But there was 2 promises that he did address. One, he wants to unite. He wants to have bipartisanship in our government and Congress. And the second promise, nobody making under $400,000 per year would see a penny more in taxes. Those are the 2 promises he mentioned that he kept. The other 2, so out of the 4 promises, 2 he's sticking by. The other 2, student debt forgiveness of up to $10,000 and $200 per month for Social Security beneficiaries, he didn't mention at all. And I think that's a little bit interesting, but let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. So what does this mean? It's actually pretty simple. What this means is there weren't too many big changes, but the big change that we saw was the name. Now, why is this good? I want to address this because the Build Back Better Act. Well, first off, the Build Back Better. Okay? Some were saying that how do you build back better when what we had wasn't great to begin with, right? Other people say what we're getting now is building a better America, okay? Like even former President Donald Trump, make America great again, right? Building a better America. Could this include more things? The Build Back Better Act had a lot of stuff that people just didn't want. But could the Building a Better America plan, could this include things that would actually help the American people? Most likely. But will we see it? That's the question. So, as of right now, that is what we know. If you guys have any questions on any of this stuff, you can always ask down in the comment section below. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.